the human connection, the human touch counts. And there's a danger of being truly addicted to this. We watch other people live their lives as we are missing living our own life.
Although the world was shutting down physically, there was this whole other blooming that was happening.
Children spend very little time out in nature anymore. It is absolutely shocking to me.
I lived in one of our very densely populated cities, and I felt very alone and very isolated and very singular in a city that never sleeps.
Your weirdness is your uniqueness, and when we can celebrate our uniqueness and step into our weirdness, then that is really like yourself and your friend and everyone else here is stepping into our power. Hey everyone, it's Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive into today's discussion. You may have been watching our videos, but have not had a chance to hit that subscribe button. So if you have gained value from our conversations, from our channel, it would be so appreciated for us if you would hit that subscribe button below right now and even give us a like. What that means is not only does it allow us to grow our subscriber base, but it also allows us to bring in even more guests for you to listen to. And you will be one of the first ones to be notified. So please hit that subscribe button and let's get started on today's wonderful panel discussion. Welcome to today's panel discussion. My name's Sophia from Sacred You, and not only do we have the honor of hosting our Ignite Your Inner Power panel discussions, but I also have the privilege today of facilitating this incredible discussion with these amazing women on the sacred power of human connection, which is something very dear to me because I personally believe, like a lot of people, especially Maslow, that connection is one of the 6 human needs. And in a digital age where the technology brings us closer, are we actually really feeling and experiencing that deep connection? So with me today, we have, and we will go around and introduce everyone very soon, but we have the beautiful SARA ROCCISANO, I hope, who's joining us, Esther SARLO, MARINA HABER, and the beautiful Samantha Wittenberg. And we will get everyone to introduce themselves very soon. But I just want to talk a little bit about the panel because we live in a time where the world feels really disconnected, despite, like I said, being more connected digitally. If it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't be able to bring these amazing women together. So how can we use technology, live in this 3D world, but still experience that true connection? And for me, I'm Sophia Soul, the co-creator of Sacred You, which is all about experiencing those deeper connections. So let's go in and introduce these beautiful women. And Esther, would you like to please say hello and tell us where you're calling in from, a little bit about yourself, and what interests you in today's world?
Oh, big questions. I love it. Thank you for having me on this panel. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'm Esther, and I live just outside Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada on the West Coast. And I've lived here for, a long time. More than half of my life I've lived in this region, and I'm originally from Ontario in Canada. And I am a founder and CEO of the company Mind Myself, which is a safe online space for, in particular, women everywhere to come and find out about complementary, holistic, and integrative health. All of the information is free, and my goal is every woman everywhere can have access to this information, so you have a choice. And what the third question you asked was, what interests me or what's piquing my curiosity about the world today? Just what we're talking about. This is a subject I'm so passionately committed to discussing, and that is connections and how important it is to come together instead of some of this dividing that has been happening for the last number of years. So we're in the right place at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I look forward to talking with you very much more. Marina, what about your beautiful self? Tell us about you and what interests you in today's topic. What brings you to our panel?
First, let me say who I am. I am a life coach. I specialize in clinical hypnotherapy with NLP techniques, and I work with people who are suffering from exactly what you're talking about, disconnection, which leaves us stressed out, fearful, alone. The key is always the aloneness, the loneliness. So I work with people that are dealing with those issues, and I am living in Palm Beach Gardens now, Florida. I also lived in many other places, but now it's Florida. And what interests me about this, it is the foundation of who we are, the togetherness, the oneness, the wholeness. And I always go back to our origins, which are, we were one, and now we are splintered and apart, but we are seeking the unity. And it is in unity where we are strong. So that's why I am here tonight.
I like that. It is in unity that we are strong. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Samantha, would you like to introduce yourself as well and tell us what interests you about today's topic?
Thanks, Sophia. So I'm originally from South Africa, but I'm living in Australia at the moment. And the reason I came here has to do with my daughter, who is autistic, has special needs, and I support other parents. Having gone on this journey myself, I have set up a speaking and coaching business where I speak about autism and inclusion, and I support parents who are going through a journey with special needs children. And I am really passionate and inspired by a recent experience of a vision quest where I connected to what we could call the more than human world. So for me, connection to other humans is there's a really important balance. That's just one part of connection, and it's having the more than human world, connecting to the birds, the plants, the trees, is the way that I personally need to interact with the world in order to be more human and more whole. So yes, human is a very important part of that connection, and there's a lot more as well.
Thank you very much. And our beautiful SARA, who's joining us all the way from the US, the other side of the world. I don't know where you are at the moment, SARA, but thank you for joining us. And would you like to introduce yourself? And again, you've come in at the last moment, which I really appreciate, but what interests you in today's topic?
I like this topic a lot because it's very relevant and it's something that's necessary is human connection. And it's led me to be exactly where I am right now, the need for connection. And so my name is SARA ROCCISANO. I'm the founder of Embolden Adventures, an award-winning travel inspiration content site. I'm an author and an international public speaker. And what I find very interesting right now is this ascension that's happening around the world, how the three-dimensional world's breaking down right in front of our eyes, everything we know, institutions, you name it, but there's an ascension that's happening, and that's going to bring us together. So if it hasn't already in progress. So I'm very excited to see what's about to happen. I'm watching it all over Twitter, and I'm just like, what the heck, man? Let's just keep holding the light and keep grounding and keep believing that something good is on the horizon.
Thank you so very much, and thank you everyone for joining us. And with us today in the audience is the beautiful Sally Turton. Thank you, Sally, for joining us on today's panel.
Sally.
If you have any questions about anything, you're more than welcome. If you'd like to share anything, just let us know, and we would welcome your input and questions. So let's get going, and I'd love to know from Esther. I'd love to know from everyone, but let's start with Esther. In today's digital age, right, why do you think so many individuals, so many people still feel isolated, even though we can be connected so much online?
Isn't it one of the big questions for this age, really, truly? I remember at the beginning of 2020, everything was up in the air. Though so many things were changing. We didn't know what was true and what wasn't. We still don't. But there's so much discussion of what was going on. And then, although the world was shutting down physically, there was this whole other blooming that was happening. Zoom became a thing. It used to be Skype. Now it's Zoom. Everybody knows about Zoom. And in that time, I'm getting to answer your question, but in that time, I made connections with people all over the world that I never, ever would have met. Some who I consider my friends today, and I have yet to meet them in the real, in the flesh. And so that's been one of the great things about this technological advance in this age and all the stuff we have at our fingertips. But why we're at the same time as all that magic is happening online, why we're feeling disconnected, I think, is some of us have gotten out of the habit of connecting in person, in the flesh. And sometimes, I'll just speak for myself as an example. I used to go to movies all the time. It was just something we did. I don't go to movies anymore. Not that that's the connection with other people, but it was a thing to do with other people. They'll say, oh, let's just go to a movie. Let's see what's playing right now. And it's just not even in my lexicon. There's so many streaming services. Why would I do that now? So gradually there have been a few things that the usual way that some of those social things used to happen perhaps aren't anymore. And so I think some of it is just we've gotten out of the habit. Some of it is perhaps we've changed a little bit. Doesn't mean the desire isn't there, but perhaps there's just a different impetus now. I believe, I know this is something else we're going to be talking about. I believe we long for connection, deep longing. It doesn't mean some people are introverts and some people are extroverts. I'm an extrovert. So I love that interplay and connection. But those who have been introverted and they've had these several years of experience, it's like, how do I change that? So I could talk forever, but I want to leave some space for the other fabulous women on this panel. But I think there's habit, there's caring, there's an imperative. And how do we balance all that and then be intentional around it?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Esther. And yes, I agree. It's the habit and it's balancing, which I definitely want to get into, is how do we balance the technology, but also being in this world. But Marina, would you like to add anything on your thoughts that in today's age where the majority of people are on digital devices all day, why do you think many individuals feel so isolated?
There's a good and a bad. Obviously, we heard of the good, which is that in times of crisis, yes, we have a lifeline elsewhere. But there's a big but. The human connection, the human touch counts. And there's a danger of being truly addicted to this. We watch other people live their lives as we are missing living our own life. In my book, Your GPS to Happiness, I write, we live in a time in which we have replaced emotions with emojis, traded real events for relevant hashtags, and have become emotionally as flat as our devices. And that has left us feeling extremely lost, alone, desperate, and we have lost the ability to reconnect with others. So that's the problem. And the more we get into this life, into this illusion, yet it is good, it is a good substitute, but it is a substitute nonetheless. So there's a requirement of balance. When we balance this and being together with fabulous, amazing women like tonight, and balancing it with being with other people, and just as my son would say, chilling. We're just chilling, we're just hanging, and just being together, and just being the way we are, without makeup, without pretense, and being comfortable in our own skin is hugely important, because we need that part of us. We need to fill that.
Thank you. And ditto to everything that you've said. And I love it how we've replaced emotions with emojis. It's really so true. And we are pretty well emotionally flat, like all the objects that we have the emojis on. Thank you for that. And Samantha, what about you? What do you think in today's, or why in today's digital age are so many individuals, so many people feeling so isolated?
I'm probably going to talk about nature immersion and Vision Quest again, because the statistics around I know in America and Australia, children spend very little time out in nature anymore. It is absolutely shocking to me, the statistics. They're on their devices from when they get home from school. So this is going to have major impacts on later stages of life and the ability to make connections with people, not just people, but the more than human world as well. So I feel very inspired to be part of what's been called rewilding, because when I was on Vision Quest, and I know it was the same for all 14 of us, coming out of 4 days and nights of solitude in nature, in wild nature, there's a sense that I belong here. I like just 100% knowing that I have a place here, I belong, I'm connected to everything, and everything is connected to me. And that is like incredibly powerful and positive sense of wholeness and knowing my place in the world. And just a last point, coming out of that solitude, there was a beautiful ceremony, like a welcoming back into the village ceremony, where the people who come back and the people who were holding the space were sitting like in a circle around a fire and singing this welcoming back song, welcoming to the village. And having not seen anyone for 4 days, I was just blown away. It was the eyes, like suddenly there were all these eyes and the beauty of other humans. And there was a very young boy there, and he was playing around, and just all these ages and stages, and around the fire, coming back into the village was just such an incredible celebration. And wow, humans are so beautiful. But yeah, that's my thoughts at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. Being on a Vision Quest like that would have been an extremely powerful experience. So thank you for sharing. And I honor you for going through that. Thank you. And Sarah, do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to add about why we are so isolated? So please share.
I am going to play the contrarian's view.
Yes.
I think we're coming together more now. And here's why I'm saying that. There's many reasons. I feel it personally because when I lived in New York City for over 20 years, I lived in one of our very densely populated cities, and I felt very alone and very isolated and very singular in a city that never sleeps. Every time I would go get my coffee in the morning, it was always a sea of strange faces. The only person I really knew was my doorman, right? Our neighbors don't know each other. We live next door for the last 15 years, don't even say hi. So that was extremely isolating. by myself in Midtown Manhattan on 57th Street, a very busy street, by my lonesome in my one-bedroom apartment, which led me to surrender and say, I can't do this anymore, was one of the reasons. Now, I feel so different. I'm such a different person because I'm connected to nature is one reason. So I agree with Samantha for that, the importance of nature, but also too, because the connection with people and things we love, and we're finding our tribes. So a lot of where I'm finding excitement, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, is this friend I knew from wherever in the Bronx, and this person I went to 7th grade with who lives in Florida, I put them in touch and they met in person. Another person is a power lifter who I met at the speaking competition the last 2 days ago, and I put her in touch with a friend who's also a power lifter. They're going to meet. So it's a power of connection, and I'm seeing that this is really paying in dividends when you travel and see the world and you get to meet people and you keep in touch with them and you find commonality. But I also see this in the sense of coming together, because a lot of where I'm doing some good work is mentorship for students of my old undergrad college. And these students are Gen Z and Gen Alpha now, and they feel very isolated on campus. And a lot of where I'm seeing some repetitive sort of kind of comments from them is we feel isolated, we're very in competition with one another, we don't talk to each other. And it's true, because when I was on campus, it was extremely quiet and everyone was on their phone. And I like to remind them that when we were on campus, didn't have cell phones, didn't have a laptop, didn't have Google, we didn't have ChatGPT. We were forced to be friends with one another on campus. And so what I'm finding is a lot of these students are reaching out to me and my generation of alumni because they want to talk to us. They're seeking companionship, they're seeking advice, they're seeking mentorship, they're seeking guidance because they're not getting it with one another because they grew up in that era of a cell phone. So yeah, I think being around people, being around nature, getting out of the city that never sleeps where no one talks to each other, finding commonality, traveling, all these things are opportunities now as opposed to 2020 when we were stuck, cooped up in our apartments being told to isolate. And I'm still a little mad about that because I was in a city that was extremely quiet and it led to my mental health decline because they told me I couldn't leave my own apartment. So I welcome the opportunity now because it's a very different world than what it was 5 years ago.
Thank you, and I totally agree. And thank you for sharing that. Very interesting to see the difference that we can use the balance. Yes, we have the technology to connect, but it's still important, definitely important to get out with nature. So thank you, everyone. And Esther, I'd love to come back to you now. And I have a question that is all about self-awareness. And in your experience, how does self-awareness contribute to developing healthier and more meaningful relationships?
Oh my goodness, another totally important thing, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, actually. If in connection, in relation to connection, if we don't spend time with ourselves, if we don't know who we are, if we're not aware of what's going on in our bodies, I think it impedes our ability to connect with others. And I love to use this analogy. You might have heard me say it before, but many of us have been taught to live here up. It's all in the brain. It's all in our words. It's just from here. We have bodies. It's body, mind, spirit. And the body is not just an inconvenient receptacle to clothe and house and feed and nurture and water. It's actually a valuable part of who we are as humans. Again, body, mind, spirit. And if we listen to it, if we become aware of it, it's giving us messages and signals all the time. And if all we're paying attention to is our brains, we're missing out. We are so missing out. And so the more I come to, I like what, Sarah, I thought you were talking about ascension, or somebody was talking about ascension. I think it was you. And I'm attending this coming weekend in Calgary, Alberta. There's a weekend called Ascend. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So really interesting synchronicity. But if we want to take ourselves to the next level, if we want to really connect with other people on a soul level, on a soul to soul, heart to heart, we have to know ourselves, because otherwise they're getting to know the mask of us. And who needs to know the mask? Honestly, you can't sustain the mask anyway, and they're going to see below it or beneath it or behind it or whatever that is. So let the other get to know you, the real you. And the more you know you, the better able you're going to be to do that. Plus, ultimately, I think it's way more fun because then we don't have to worry about all that other stuff in the background and hiding. So important, beyond important, to spend time with ourselves. And of course, as Samantha was emphasizing, in nature. I don't get out enough. I spend way too much time in front of a computer. So yeah, that's one of probably the best ways that we can do that.
Thank you for sharing that, Esther. And I hear you about spending way too long in front of the computer and how important it is to really get to know ourselves, to connect with ourselves, especially being in nature. Thank you so much. Marina, I'd love to go back to you, and with your background in holistic wellness, how does physical well-being influence all our capacities for meaningful connections, meaningful relationships?
Well, everything is connected. Your physiology influences your psychology influences your physiology. We are completely connected within ourselves. Everything leads to another, and the other leads back to the origin. So it is a constant circle. And our physiology, as I said, is influenced by our state of mind. And again, vice versa. Now, here's what happens. When our state of mind, which is the origin, in my opinion, it's the origin, where we start with, for example, diseases. If you don't feel well about ourselves, if you have a constant, like this stress and the pit in our stomachs, and always worried, always anxious, always thinking, what if, oh, something could happen, and I'm stressed, I'm fearful, I'm holding it here. And I can guarantee that at some point, usually when it's extreme chronic stress and anxiety and you're holding it in your stomach, you will see it affecting your physical health. There is no way around it, either with ulcers, it can lead to cancers, it can lead to all sorts of diseases. When you start healing your mind, and when you start calming down, slowing down, and letting go of the stuff that really doesn't serve you and that doesn't do anything for you either, you can relax, and you can also, therefore, heal your body again. There are ways through hypnotherapy that we can access the unconscious, or rather it's the subconscious mind, and we can do actual physical healing. It starts with us. And yes, I agree that self-awareness is the first step, or better yet, some self-love. The origin is when we don't like ourselves. We start hiding, we start denying, we start fleeing, we start telling ourselves stories and make up images that who knows if they're even better than the real us. But we think, oh, they may think this one's better. In other words, we are chipping away from the block who we are, and it affects us. So I would say that it is hugely important to maintain the mind and the body in harmony. Everything is harmony and balance.
Yes, it is, totally. And we've all experienced that. So thank you for sharing that. And I love it how it really comes down to, how you shared, it really comes down to self-love. And that includes loving the body, because if there's any part of our bodies that we don't love, it's very easy to hide behind a camera. Thank you for sharing it. And Samantha, I'd love to go to you with your experience in communities and community development. What are some approaches, some effective approaches to bridging the divide within diverse communities? How can we bridge that divide within diverse communities to really experience unity?
What comes to mind is nonviolent communication, which I've had a lot of experience with and have facilitated workshops and trainings in nonviolent communication, also known as NVC. It is one framework of communication that I think is relatively simple to understand. It's not necessarily simple to implement, but in this way of seeing another person, we look at needs, universal human needs that everybody has, such as connection, which, by the way, Tony Robbins pointed this out to me, that connection is a poor substitute for love. Actually, what we really want is love is the ultimate, and as you said, self-love. So if we're wanting to have that connection or love with others, seeing how they behave and what they say from the lens of what are the needs alive in this person? This person has needs just like I do. They often, in a conflict situation, people will actually have very similar needs, but their conflict is on the level of the strategies that they're using to meet those needs, instead of looking at making the needs the focus, because a need is not connected, is not limited to one strategy. So if let's say I'm feeling lonely, and I think that my partner is the only person that's going to meet my need for connection. So right now, I need to be seen and heard, and it's got to be my partner. So then I'm set on a particular strategy of being seen and heard is the need. That is a very precious need. And that's part of self-love, is honoring our needs and seeing their preciousness, and also knowing that all needs are equal. Like, everyone else has precious needs too, and they are equally important. So if I consider my need to be seen and heard, and I'm demanding that my partner see and hear me, that's going to cause conflict. But if I look at it in a more creative way, how can I be seen and heard? Perhaps I can call a friend and have an empathy session with them, or meet up with somebody, some other person. I could still get seen and heard. I can still get my needs met in a way that is respectful to everybody and respecting everybody's needs. So I think that nonviolent communication, and it is becoming more and more widespread in community, in all sorts of situations. There are even special NVC schools where children are learning these skills. There is hope for diversity and inclusion in all sorts of situations, because all humans have the same needs.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do have the same needs, including those in diverse communities. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and we'd love to know more about NVC, and we will of course be putting everyone's links in the comments. So for anyone who is watching, do click on these links, reach out to Samantha, especially if you'd like to know more about NVC. So thank you. And Sarah, I'd love to know from your experience, what are some best practices that we can all bring in to maintain authenticity, to be really authentic in online communications when we interact with people online? How can we be authentic?
I love the word authentic. And I feel like that's the theme now going forward. Authenticity, it's important. And I will give a nod to my friend Allie, who lives in the jungles of Belize. She is rebranding herself as a feral jungle princess, and she has a Harvard MBA. And she, like me, has been really frustrated with the way that our careers in the past in the Matrix have been going. Job losses, frustration with complying, and the reality of just conforming and putting on your sort of work persona cap. And we're all getting hit one way or the other with layoffs or difficulties or frustrations and the old way of doing things in corporate America. So she decided she is going to just be her authentic self in the jungles of Belize. And she's said on LinkedIn, because she's now just showing her true colors on a professional social site, she said within a week of deciding she's going to be this, she's getting more marketing opportunities than ever in terms of clients because she's authentic, because she's literally talking about very real things that she is clearly doing and has pictures to prove it potentially. So authenticity matters. And I know I'm authentic because I just start talking about aliens one day on Facebook and I just don't care. Like things like that, where there's no fear that people think you're weird. How come? Because that is giving the external world power over your internal state of mind, state of being. And so your light, your authentic light, your vibe is what projects outward, and then you attract your tribe. So if you're not right with the mind, body, spirit, like Esther has said, mindset is critical. If you're not feeling grounded in your true authentic self, you're going to be in a state of fear because you're worried about what the other world thinks of you. Oh my God, I'm talking about aliens. They must think I'm weird. I don't care. So that's why I'm authentic, because yeah, I channeled aliens one day. Let's talk about it, because now we're talking about the drones that are literally over my house right now. Are they orbs? Are they government intelligence? What is it? I don't know. Let's talk about it. What about the pyramids? What's those drill lines that they found? Is that an ancient civilization? Like Samantha, who's done a vision quest, when I was working with the Shipibo shamans in the rainforest, I was able to channel some messages about the where those pyramids were formed. They were interdimensional beings that use electromagnetic and sound frequencies to raise the rocks using vibrations. So I'm like, great, let's talk about it. That's authenticity online right there. And so if people are going to then say, oh, you're weird and cast judgment, I'm going to be like, I don't care, because I know what's true for me and I'm going to vibe with my tribe. So that's how I look at the world. I just have no fear. And I don't, just like my friend who's the jungle princess, we're just going to be real, man.
Thank you. And I want to honor you for your weirdness, because in my mind, it's your weirdness is your uniqueness. And when we can celebrate our uniqueness and step into our weirdness, then that is really like yourself and your friend and everyone else here is stepping into our power. So thank you, Sarah. Looking forward to hearing more about your travels in your book that's coming out soon. Thank you. And Esther, let's go back to you for one, maybe two last questions, but one is, I want to know about vulnerability. In your experience, what role does vulnerability play in establishing really those deep and lasting human connections?
I believe vulnerability, really, to get to love, we have to be vulnerable and authentic. And I think another part of that in there too is curiosity. We need to be curious about what's in our own heart, because sometimes we don't know. It's just been stuffed down for too long, or it's not been allowed, or whatever the circumstance. So being curious about what our own self-sabotage has been and prevented us from getting connection or love, and taking the time to be vulnerable with ourselves. That's the first place. And then I think we have to step in and not just fling ourselves and be completely open and vulnerable, like just wide open. Maybe some people would disagree with me, but test the waters first, depending on how strong you are and how often or how frequently you have tried to do that. And you have to dance the line between safety and pushing your own envelope and push it a little more and test the waters. And I would say, do it with people who you feel safe with first. Don't just shove it all out there. If you're going to do an experiment like Sarah, or just say, yeah, I'm out there and I'm going to talk about whatever, and like it or lump it, great, awesome, love that. Not everybody's there yet. So if you're not there and you're not at a place of saying, yes, this is me, like it or lump it, that's okay too, because not everybody's an extrovert. So I say vulnerability is absolutely important and key, but take your steps, do one at a time, and get success in one area, whatever that means. Not financial success, not talking about here, but success in, oh, I can do that. I got this. Okay, now maybe I could take the next step. And maybe you can take 5 steps once when you get some practice in there. So vulnerability really truly is important, but it's only one of the skills in your toolkit, let's just say. And I want to tell a brief story. This week, I don't know why I haven't seen him before, but a guy named Jacob Collier. He's a musician. He's an extraordinary being. He's from England. And he's got what they call absolute pitch, which is perfect pitch, but he doesn't need another pitch in reference to be able to give you an E flat or a G sharp or whatever it is. He can just say it and sing it and tell you it. And he's also what they call a polymath, and he can play many instruments. I never heard of him. So whole circumstance, I wrote a blog on healing this week and published it. And I just came across him by accident. And I watched him in several different videos, but there was one, he was at the O in London, the O Arena in London, 20,000 people were there to see him. And he directed the crowd and they sang different notes. And he's just doing this. He gets up from behind his piano and he's giving notes to people. And I just witnessed his vulnerability in that. And he's very confident in his abilities. He's 30 now. He started doing this when he was like 2 or something, not directing, but honing his musical abilities. And I watched the crowd listen and respond and sing. They're probably not all singers, but they were singing. And it takes a bit of vulnerability, A, for him to put himself out there like that, and B, for us to remember who we are and allow ourselves to open our mouths and sing or speak or do whatever. And just, if you haven't ever checked out Jacob Collier, look him up. Brilliant. And I just watched his personal vulnerability and confidence at the same time. So that's how I'd answer your question about vulnerability.
Thank you. And I'm just taking a moment to take that in, and we definitely will be looking up Jacob Collier. He sounds to be an amazing person with an incredible talent, you could say, but a talent that's been honed all his life. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. And Marina, what about you? You have moved. You've said that you've traveled quite a bit. You've moved lots of different places. And I know you're not from America as such in your culture, but in your experience, talking about culture, how does cultural diversity enrich our experience and understanding of human connection?
When I was a kid, I did not see it exactly that way. When we moved from Iran to Munich, we were called, what was it, Persian dirt monkeys or jungle monkeys. And I thought, there was no jungle where I grew up, and I didn't see a monkey either. So what happened is we were extraordinarily bullied. And I learned to stand up for myself. Trust me, after a very short period of time, they did not bully me anymore because I took care of it. They underestimated how strong I am. They stopped doing that, and that was that. It strengthened me in many ways, but it also, because I was not only the Iranian whatever, but I was also odd in that I was much older than my age. I spent a lot of time with my mother because for me, she was more interesting. We had deeper subjects to talk about. We talked about spirituality. And let me tell you, at that time, there was no talk about spirituality in my peer group for sure. So I felt like the oddball out. Then I moved to Paris, and here came the conflict. I went to the American college. Now, I was neither German, I was not Iranian, I wasn't Dutch like my mother, I wasn't French, I wasn't American, I was nothing. And it was a moment that I went, whew, this is troubling. And what it made me understand in very small steps is that understanding my identity as very slow, as being who I am, simply who I am, and finding blessings that I have so many commonalities with so many others. That was growth. And over the years, then we immigrated to Vancouver. We felt very blessed that Vancouver took us in because no one else wanted those Iranians. And so we became Canadians. And then I moved to the United States because I had a calling that I would live in New York. And it was simply a drive I had to go. And finally in New York, I started to put all those parts together. And therein is what I'm doing today, because we are made up of so many different parts. We are not only the soul or the heart or the ego or the hero or the victim. We are all of them. And through my very long journey, I have accepted and understood, and therefore I find that I can relate to other people very easily, because I've been there. I've been on this journey. It can be lonely. You can be the outsider. But in everything I find, there is a learning and a growth. And we should take the growth and let the rest go. Shed that story and take the learning from it. And vulnerability is part of it. And accepting that there is going to be pain, but where there is no pain, there's also no joy. So I'm taking it with me.
Definitely helps to go through the pain, to experience
Yes.
vulnerability, because as you said, when there's no pain, there's no joy. And for me, from my experience, and I think from everyone else, is that it's the pain that helps us grow.
Yeah.
Those experiences, I hear you, Marina, about being extremely bullied when you're younger, but it's those experiences that have made you or helped make you who you are now.
Yes, indeed.
So thank you for that, for sharing that. And Samantha, with your experience, especially with NVC, how does, or what impact does active listening have on our quality of relationships? How can we really be an active listener?
This is something I love to talk about. We call it empathy or empathic listening in the NVC community. But before I answer that, I just wanted to mention the singing, what an incredible tool singing is to bring people together, because music is such a common language. And when everybody is singing the same thing, they are like, that is really powerful way of connecting. So I love that story, Esther, and your powerful story too, Marina, of just belonging, a sense of belonging, finding that sense of belonging. It doesn't have to be a nationality. Like we're so attached to the nationality and the flags and all of that sort of thing, but we're earthlings. We're all earthlings. So thank you. And yeah, so we call this empathic listening, where I think most people these days know what that is being able to hold the space and just listen without giving advice, without commenting, without criticizing, just reflecting back what you hear the person say, so that they can hear themselves and get the clarity that they need inside themselves. Because only I can find my answers within me, because they're all so unique about our soul's journey and our purpose. So being given that space to hear ourselves is very precious. Like presence is the greatest gift you can give someone. And that helps them to connect with themselves. And then, of course, it enables connection between two people when there is judgment-free, safe space to hear each other, which, yeah, can be challenging in certain relationships. So sometimes you might need a mediator or a facilitator to make sure that the active listening is actually respected. So yeah, I offer empathy sessions online, and I have never experienced, I've also got empathy buddies that listen to me, and I find it a really fast, effective way to center myself, ground myself, and be able to move forward again, to find solutions, to get clear on what my next actions need to be, and to move on. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love it, how you mentioned presence, being absolutely present in a relationship, in a conversation is the greatest gift that we can give someone, especially in a world today where people bring their devices to just about every conversation, and they're much more easier having conversations with their devices rather than with someone else. So thank you for sharing, Samantha, and we will of course be putting your links in the comments below. Thank you. And Sarah, before we wrap up, can I ask you, especially in your experience of living in New York, what you were sharing before, how can we cultivate a sense of belonging in environments when people feel like a total outsider?
Yeah, it goes back to what you love to do. And in my case in New York, even though I described it was very isolating in a city that never sleeps, because it was, you're on a subway with people you don't know, so you keep to yourself, right? It's always like walking around amongst the crowd, but your own quiet individual in a lot of ways. But one thing I did and I loved before I left New York was I bought an electric scooter, one of those stand-up scooters, and mine went 30 miles an hour, which I don't know how that translates in kilometers, but it was fast. In fact, the speed limit in New York City is 25 miles an hour. So this is a joke and say, let the cops pull me over for speeding. Let's see that. Let's see them do that. And so I would go from my apartment in Midtown and I would take it all the way down to downtown where my office was, near where the Twin Towers used to stand, so down in Wall Street. And it was the best experience, scooting around, getting there, beating the subway downtown. And eventually I found an electric skate club. And I was the only chick. It was all these dudes and me. And they really loved their skateboards that go faster than mine. Their battery power is more powerful. Some of the guys rode electric unicycles, EUCs, which they went the fastest. And they wore this armor and motorcycle helmets. And then there were a few others. But I had my red scooter and I was part of the tribe. Again, something that's fun. And we're having a good time. And we were all outcasts because apparently the true skaters that don't have battery packs, that have to use their actual foot to power their skateboard, look down on the guys who have the electric skateboards. That was something that they always felt like they were this kind of outsider. So they bound together and found their tribe. And then you had little old me joining them. So we had the best time. We were in Central Park riding. We go through, especially when we had lockdowns, it was no one on the streets. We had the full reign of the avenues going through Times Square. It was so much fun. And these guys are really into like cameras and recording equipment and doing their videos on YouTube. So I got to learn a thing or two as a travel blogger, as someone who showcases my travels across the world. It was my opportunity to meet some interesting guys who knew a lot about video recording and editing and post-production and music. And so there you go, because what I was saying throughout this whole podcast is we find our tribe based on what we like to do and how we want to show up authentically. So it opened some interesting doors, and I continue to stay in touch with these guys. That's how we got along in New York. We found what made us happy and where we could relate with one another in a city that we're strangers amongst one another more generally.
Thank you. I'm just writing that down. Find what makes you happy. Thank you so much, Sarah. Now, I've just realised what the time is, and we have come to the top of our wonderful panel discussion. But before we finish up, I'd love to go around just once more. And of course, for everyone, we are putting all your links below. But I'd love to know from everyone, and Esther, let's start with you. Do you have any, let's say, one tip, one powerful tip on how we can really build deeper bonds, deeper connections in this fragmented world? And also tell us if you've got any offers that you would like to share.
Thank you. I think one of the key tips, if you will, is something I mentioned earlier. Stay curious. Stay curious and listen. Those are the two things I would say. Listen to yourself and listen to others. Stay curious, listen, be present, for sure. And my offer is, as always, come to the Mind Myself website. There's so much there. We've just done a series on what's light got to do with it. And I'm interviewing a medical doctor who has surrendered her license and is now practicing energy medicine. And she's done a deep dive into light and circadian rhythms. And it's fascinating. There's some science in there too. But so just come. And I also just interviewed somebody this week, and she's in her 50s and she's had young onset Alzheimer's. And the podcast isn't released yet, but she's telling her story. And she's such a capable, competent woman. And Alzheimer's and dementia is everywhere. And so I want to get the word out for that. But come to Mind Myself, listen to our podcast, check out our blogs, etc. Sign up for our newsletter and stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. And like I said, we'll be putting those links down the bottom. Thank you. And Marina, what about you? Do you have one powerful tip on how we can really build those deeper bonds, those deeper connections in this crazy world? And also tell us about if you have any offers.
I would suggest to speak to your heart, to connect with your own heart, and to strengthen your relationship with yourself first. And then from a confident position that you are comfortable with who you are, you become more comfortable with when you are out there, wherever that is, because you stop thinking, you stop being in your head. What will they think about you? Because it's really not what they think, but what you think about yourself that's bothering you so much. So start with yourself. I have a 40-minute free strategy session. And when you book that free strategy session with me, I will give you also a bonus of a recording with progressive relaxations and another bonus of a magical trance session or trance magic, which will transform you.
Thank you. Looking forward to that. And thank you for sharing your tips of truly loving ourselves. Right? Connect with our own thank you. And Samantha, any last tips from you or a tip from you, and anything that you would like to offer all our listeners?
There's so much, and I will just focus on the empathy aspect because I've already spoken about that. Yeah, if you're wanting to get in touch with what really matters to you, it's important to find a safe space where you can be heard, where you can hear yourself and get that clarity on what really matters, what needs are really alive, and then the actions that you need to take towards fulfilling that need. So for carers and parents of special needs children, I offer a free an initial assessment or conversation just to connect and also help them to identify what's sitting at the top of the priorities, and talk about how I can support them. Yeah, so clarity and connection call is what I call it. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia, for facilitating.
Thank you, Samantha. And Sarah, any last tips from you? What's one powerful technique that we can do to really connect with ourselves and others in this crazy world?
And it's only going to get crazier. Things are breaking down in epic proportions. And so what we do is we hold the light and we ground. And we stay in nature and we look to what is real right in front of us. The trees, the sky, the birds, the wind, how I'm feeling. Honor how you're feeling. Maybe today I'm really nervous. I'm picking up on whether it's a solar storm happening or the energy around me of nervousness or whatever is happening. Honor it, know it, be mindful to it, ground. And find your tribe, because the more things start breaking down around us and making us nervous because there's a lot of change afoot, we need to find community and navigate the storms together. So again, finding the community is what you love to do, and how you attract your tribe is being authentic and having no fear and not care what others think. So that's what's happening, is there's reinvention abound, and we might as well find the people we want to be surrounded with so we can navigate these waters together. So good luck to us all. I'm so excited to what's to come. I would love to invite you all to emboldenadventures.com. You can see it right here, Embolden Adventures. /book is the placeholder for my book coming out this year. It's a very interesting transformational travel series. This is book 1 of 3, and it talks about my true story adventure for 5 weeks in 2020 that sets me up for leaving the Matrix. It's a very interesting tale, so I highly encourage you to check it out. And when you sign up for the listserv, you will get the prologue to the book. So that will come to your inbox when you go to emboldenadventures.com/book and click on the link to sign up.
Thank you ever so much. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. Before we wrap up, I'd just like to invite Sally. If you wish, Sally, would you like to add anything, or do you have any questions for any of our panelists today? Thank you for sharing, for joining us.
I've just enjoyed being in the atmosphere and hearing about how different people connect. Connection is really important to me, but I've often felt an outsider, and I'm not feeling an outsider as much anymore. And I can attest to Samantha's coaching. It's really helped me more than spending years with talk therapy with a social work mental health practitioner. I've found out and I'm finding who my authentic self is in ways that I'd never experienced or even expected, taking away layers of social conditioning and education.
Thank you for joining us, Sally. Really,
Thank you.
really thank you. We are honoured that you're here. So, and
Thank you.
that you have gained a lot from it. And again, I'd like to thank Esther and Marina and our beautiful Samantha and Sarah for joining us. And of course, I'm Sophia from Sacred You, where we do have a community. And yes, it is online at the moment, and we have lots of technology. But this is where, as Sarah said, you can find your tribes. We have around about 20 different special interest tribes, from psychic development to empowering yourself, empower yourself. We have astrology, we have angel cards, to reading, to connecting with your angels. But it's all about finding your tribes, connecting with like-minded women from all over the globe, all over the world, using the technology to help empower ourselves, but also balancing it with connecting to nature and everything else that we need in our lives, connecting to people in reality, which a lot of our members do when we're in the same location. So do check us out, follow us on all our social media. Check out our website, which is sacredyou.love. That's the letter U.love. Do check that out. Join us. We're really excited. We have our own online community, our village community, where you can join us for free. So it's sacredyou.love, join free, and come and connect. We don't have to live in a world alone. It's, as Sarah said and everyone else, The world's getting crazy, but we don't have to be alone. We're all going through, we're all on this journey together. We've all got each other's backs and we all hear each other. I hear you. I hear what Marina's been through with bullying. I hear everything, like I've experienced it. I feel it. I know. So thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. It has been a wonderful time and we look forward to seeing you very soon.